You're juggling it all: work, family, decisions, expectations, six hats, maybe more every single day. But behind the scenes, your body is running on stress, and stress left unchecked will lead to illness. I'm Dr. Shami, an integrated family doctor, and this is Six Hats, the podcast that helps you understand what stress is doing to your body and what you can do about it now. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Six Hats podcast. And today I'm joined by a familiar guest to all my listeners, Nathalie Martinek. And for those who don't know her, she's an ex-systems biology and cancer researcher turned narcissism hacker, consultant, and independent medical culture researcher. And today we've decided to talk about scapegoating at work, which is actually a different topic. I've never even thought about talking about it. And scapegoating at work, it's a subtle but damaging form of workplace abuse, where an individual is unfairly blamed, excluded, or sacrificed to protect the image of a team or leader. And I'm sure many of our listeners are thinking, oh, is that something familiar in their workplace? It's not bullying, but can co-occur with bullying. It's a predictable pattern that follows stages, which we're going to look into. And Nathalie's actually written a book about it, the Scapegoating Playbook, which we're going to dive into. So welcome, Nathalie.
Thanks, Shami. It's so great to come back to your show.
You are such a regular and we love it. You get
Love it too.
so many downloads. I think really hits the spot of what people are thinking, perhaps not comfortable to talk about. And so I love it. And that's what we need to do more of. First question, I'm so curious. What led you down the whole path to writing a playbook about scapegoating?
Yeah, it was not on my list, my to-do list this year or any year. I've witnessed it enough. I mean, I experienced it. I think everyone has experienced being blamed for things that they didn't do. It's worse when your whole group of, say, friends or trusted people turn on you and assign the blame on you or point the finger at you. So that's essentially scapegoating. And so I've experienced it, I've witnessed it, and I witnessed it more recently in a workplace where there was high trust in a team. But it wasn't the team, it was an individual in the team being scapegoated by someone else, by a leader, someone with authority. And watching and witnessing the demoralization of this colleague was really horrible for me. And that was enough for me to go, okay, it's enough. I need to say something about this. So I started posting on LinkedIn about it and it took off. I couldn't believe how many people were resonating with this concept, with these messages, and got a lot of attention. And then a colleague suggested that I compile it into a book. And so I did.
Amazing, amazing. So we're going to dive into it. So what exactly is scapegoating? And when you were describing what happened at work, I was coming up with all these reasons. Why does it happen in workplaces? Is it an easy way out?
Yeah, it's kind of like an instinct. So we think about workplace abuse like bullying. Somebody is targeted by someone else, and it often happens behind closed doors, or it might happen openly, like someone, a boss shouting, the evil boss shouting at an employee and no one does anything, and they just cop it behind closed doors. They get horrible emails, they get demands, all sorts of things, and they're targeted. And it's awful. Scapegoating is a little different in that, yes, there's a target chosen, but it's not because someone's trying to be vindictive. It's like a reaction to a disruption or to a challenge, or that person's appearance is just challenging in some way to somebody, like someone with authority, like a leader, like a boss, a manager, or even a colleague. And slowly there's a process that unfolds to slowly remove that person from the team or the workplace or whatever that group is. And why does it happen? It's like an instinctive reaction. It's a self-protection mechanism, self-defense. And it's like a systemic response to a threat versus an individual's response to a threat. So that it starts off by somebody feeling challenged, like an employee gives feedback to their manager about something, and the manager doesn't like it. They're the fragile leader example. And so they take it personally, and they may not show that they've taken it personally, but it starts off a chain of events that turn on that person. So if that person was valued and they were a high performer and competence, now their competence is seen as a threat. and a problem. So they're told that they're too much or too little, and lots of, a poor culture fit, all sorts of excuses. And then there's slowly these rumors or doubt that's cast with the teammates to start to turn the way they think about this person against them. So I don't see it as often intentional. It can be intentional, but it's like a reaction. This person is seen as a threat. We need to get rid of them because now they're going to pose a problem to our functioning. And so there's lots of rationales that the person can draw on to turn them, to make them out to be the problem. And they
Yeah.
use the rest of the group. And you go to HR, say you're the one who's being scapegoated. You notice there's a problem. You go to HR, you go to whoever authority that is in charge of helping deal with personnel issues. And if the leader, that authority figure, has a good relationship with HR, it often backfires against the target.
Wow.
So it requires a whole system to turn on that individual to drive them out, either push them out and they are forced to resign, or they choose to resign, or they're just terminated.
I feel like that would take a lot of courage to do that because, I mean, that's like kind of leading on to my next question. Like, how do you know? I often feel like you're in scenarios and it's like upon reflection, you go, wow, that just happened. Because in that moment, you're reacting or responding. And it's only upon reflection, you go, hold on a sec, that's actually not right. So it takes a lot of courage, I think, to even address it. But so how can someone tell the difference between
It's
feedback versus being scapegoated?
Yeah. So usually, say for example, it's an employee getting feedback from their leader. If the feedback is very specific about, I notice when you do this, X happens, let's talk about it, let's work it out, let's find a way to improve things, versus I'm going to blame you, you're the problem. I blame you for X. You need to do this better, or you need to not do it as much. And it's often vague, non-specific. And sometimes it's a character, you're too kind, or you're too assertive, or you're too aggressive. So it's not something that the person receiving feedback can do anything about, because it's not specific. They don't know what the goalposts are. And that's the point. They can't actually rectify it because the person giving the feedback doesn't want them to rectify it. They're trying to control them and dominate them, but they're actually wanting them to get out of their hair.
Okay, so it is actually, yeah, there's blame. There's
Yeah.
blame with no option to go, oh, can we do this differently and help them? Oh, wow, so
Yeah.
it's the intention.
Yes, and
Mm.
it's often a reaction to something the employee did to the leader unintentionally, like asked a question, asking about a process, looking for clarification, or giving feedback, because we value honesty in our workplace. So naturally, the person believes it and gives honest feedback, and that challenges this leader. And this is their way of retaliating and restoring a sense of restoring their status in the relationship by talking down to them, or diminishing them in some way. And that's so the person on the receiving end, if that hasn't happened before because they've been praised all along by everyone, they might dismiss it. They might be like, oh, they're having a bad day, but they'll come away feeling like something's not right here, but they won't be able to put their finger on it. And it's not that one event that goes, okay, I'm a scapegoat. You can't diagnose it with that one event. It's going to be a number of similar types of dynamics that let you know you're not being valued here. And it seems like they want you out of their face. And it's not just them. You start to notice other people starting to turn their backs on you very slowly.
Wow.
So it's never just the one person, it's the entire group
Mm.
that's
Does
doing
it
that.
come from ego, from the leader's perspective? Is it an attack on their ego, which was unintentional? Can it be that
Yeah.
way? Yeah.
Yes. So that's what I refer to, well, many refer to as a fragile leader. They have, their ego can't handle anything that doesn't reflect their ideal self-image. So they take it personally instead of professionally, as an opportunity to learn and understand themselves and how they are perceived by others a little better. They take it personally, and instead of having the maturity to deal with it, they retaliate through dominating and doing the things I just described.
And could they humiliate, embarrass? Is that another form?
That's a form. And if it's specifically the leader with that employee and no one else is involved necessarily, that can be a sign of bullying.
Oh, okay.
Humiliation doesn't come until later. It doesn't
Oh,
come immediately. So that's why people who are scapegoated can't always put their finger on that this is what's happening, because they're still believing that they're seen as in a positive light because they've been praised, they're often high achievers, high performers, highly competent, have had positive work experiences previously. So it doesn't fit their own description or narrative about how they're being perceived by others. It
hmm.
takes time for it to sink in. And by the time it sinks in, it's often too late. They're far along in the scapegoating playbook.
Amazing. Amazing. So you mentioned a couple of stages of scapegoating. I'd love to know what the stages are, but more importantly, how do we identify it? And you mentioned actually, I'd love to know what's the hardest, which ones are the hardest for people to actually identify.
Yeah, I think you can identify the very first red flag stage. So, because this is a form of covert abuse until it becomes a little more overt and obvious, it follows the typical abuse cycle of idealization, devaluation, and discarding. So, if we've talked about narcissistic relationships in the past, the narcissist idealizes both parties idealize each other. That's how they form a bond, an emotional bond, or even a trauma bond. And then the person who has the dominance in the relationship or has the authority in the relationship, even though we think we're equals, somebody's going to have more authority in the relationship. The narcissist, for example, is the case. And they slowly devalue that person because the person no longer fulfills their ideal. And they can't, again, rectify that in the mind. They just they see it as some sort of injury or, a bruise to their ego, that they've chose the wrong thing. And rather than taking the blame for themselves about their perception of that person, they project their shame onto that person. And so there's the devaluation cycle, and there's a cycle within that. And then there's once the narcissist has gotten what they need out of the person, they discard them and get rid of them. So the playbook I've kind of put together, and there's lots of ways that scapegoating has been described, but not quite like the way I've laid it out. Breaks down those 3 steps that I just talked about into 8 stages. So the first stage, there's obviously the preconditions for scapegoating. So precondition is organization or a team where there's low trust. They might come across as if we trust each other, but it's low trust. So that's a condition that is present that we don't always notice until much later on. But the first step is grooming. So that's how we idealize someone. You go, you're the right fit for this role. You're amazing, even though I might not know much about you, or you have a strong reputation, whatever. They just love bomb you, or they give you opportunities, or they put you on a pedestal immediately. And we all know when we're put on a pedestal right away, the only place to go is down, where it's inevitable. Because what you need to do to maintain yourself in that position is probably unrealistic to impossible, because you're going to disappoint somebody at some point, and we should be able to. We can't always manage these expectations that have been imposed on us. So grooming. So that's the first step. And then the second to 5th step are the devaluation stages. So the tone shifts, the target starts to be undermined, is increasingly doubted by the authority, but it also starts with other members of the group. Then there's humiliation rituals. So they might be publicly put down or mocked, a joking thing, but it wasn't necessarily happening before, or it has a different tone than it did before. Then there's the narrative control. So a bit of smear campaigning. So the target is now reframed as the problem in the group as to, why things are going wrong, or the narrative that this, original authority has about what's wrong. Now it's assigned to the target as the problem. Then there's the group conditioning. So it's kind of like the group starts to turn on that person in order to stay in line and to remain safe in the eyes of the authority. And it's not just the individual leader. It could be the team. It could be the organization. It could be someone higher up. It's just whatever is the looming threat for those people, that if they speak out or they share that, I'm not so sure that these narratives about our colleague are correct. That's not my experience of them. Like, nobody's saying that. And then there's the discarding step. So the target is sort of nudged towards exiting. Either they get moved to another team, so they have to deal with integrating into a new team and managing with those dynamics. It's not their choice necessarily, or the person starts to decide, I need to go because I feel like I'm being pushed out. And then their contributions start to be erased. So it's like they're being their existence is being gradually erased. So things that they've accomplished are now someone else accomplished them. It wasn't them. They've only merely contributed rather than driven the entire project and its success. So that's again more narrative control. And then the exit step, which is, the person resigns or they're terminated. And there's also rituals in that erasure where they have to sign an NDA potentially. There's a story about why they're leaving and they have to sign. So there's lies about what's happening or what's happened. Somewhere in there, the person might complain to, file a complaint or grievance to HR or some authority. And the humiliation ritual, the narrative control, and group conditioning are all part of the scapegoating mechanism. It tends to backfire.
Wow. Do you know what I'm just thinking in that situation? Because how it correlates to what I'm doing, the stress response, chronic stress, and what you see. And I hear hundreds and hundreds of thousands of stories. And I kind of think, what's the best advice can you give in this situation? Would you say you've got to leave it, or do you battle an organization?
Yeah, it's a good question because the kinds of resources you would need to battle an organization that's bent on protecting the authority, and they tend to protect the authority. So if it's a leader and you're lower down on, the chain of command, they're going to protect the leader. That's the function of human resources. It's not there for the employees, even though many think they are or say they are. In the end, they have to make decisions that support the organization's needs, because an organization's entire need is revenue and reputation. So if there's anything that challenges revenue and reputation, they don't see it as like, oh, let's learn and grow from this. It's no, we're going to silence, we're going to oust the thing that's the threat. And if it's the employee coming in and making statements about the leaders that have been chosen for a job, it makes the organization look bad. So rather than deal with the truth of that, they get rid of the person complaining. So whistleblowers, it's common for whistleblowers to be targeted again, and they experience re-traumatization and, re-victimization. So going to HR or going to authorities above when you don't have protections, you don't have solid relationships, or you might think you have solid relationships, but you're neglecting the higher up relationships that have more power and will always control a narrative because they have more authority, more power. If you don't take that into consideration, it's kind of naive to go to complain within your organization about what's going on without good concrete evidence of, abuses. You need to have strong evidence where you have a legal case. Otherwise, they don't need to listen to you. They can twist any narrative around.
And what I've seen in so many patient stories is sometimes it's just not worth the fight for your mental, physical health. You're actually protecting yourself by just heading to another direction rather than the whole principle of it. Often people fight based on principle, but I really think seeing so many patient journeys, it's actually just worth looking after yourself first. Rather than principle.
Yeah, you have to be realistic about what you can gain from that. Some people feel like I want justice.
Yeah.
But the workplace isn't going to give you justice. Even the legal system is not going to give you justice if you don't have enough, again, protections on your side. And that includes strong evidence and data. And even if you have all those things, I've heard stories where an external investigator has been called in to do an investigation, and bullying has been proven, or, abuses have been proven. And the person who complains is told to take a leave of absence, and the perpetrator stays their role, and the evidence of the findings of the investigation are buried.
Oh my God.
So this is common. So because they just, the organization's just doing the tick boxes of what is required of them, but it doesn't mean that they have to be accountable, because there's a huge risk for them if they are accountable. It can come out, the media will know about it. It'll make them look bad. Again, reputation, revenue is everything. And that trickles down to different leaders. So leaders, managers, reputation, revenue is everything. So if there's a threat to that, they take it personally because there's pressures coming down on them. So it's a whole institutional wide problem, even though we're seeing a microcosm between a leader and a target within a team, or colleagues and everyone else in a team or a little group. It still has impacts on the institution because it's all kind of connected, unless you're dealing with a strong leader who sees through it all and can take action.
Yeah. So actually, this is a good time to ask about, so what can you do if someone does suspect that they're being scapegoated? What can you do?
What don't you do is call it out. Don't ever let them know that you see what's going on. Never call it out. Never show your cards, keep it to yourself, and start to go, okay, if I'm scapegoated, if there's 8 stages, what stage am I at right now? Because the ending is inevitable. So therefore, if I know what's coming next, I know how to I can think about how to manage myself so that I don't keep reinforcing this dynamic where I feel like I'm the problem because the shame has been projected to me, because it's a shame and envy based response. There's somebody who's posing a threat to the system. And so we need to diminish them because a threat is competent, high performing. Often, many neurodivergent people experience this because they don't quite fit. And so it's an envy and shame. The competence makes someone who's in a higher position or in a comparable position feel bad about themselves. And so they want to take them down, and they actually go through this process to take them down and influence a group. I don't think they're trying to intentionally take them down. So it's, again, don't see it as they're taking it personally. It's different to bullying. It's like an immune response of an organization to keep itself safe and protected, and it sees you as a threat. So it's important not to go through the normal processes of trying to seek justice within the organization because it's so subtle. You don't have enough evidence to prove it. You probably have to start to plan to get the hell out. Because it's not gonna end well for you unless you're, again, what rights you have, and you could use legal as a way to get yourself either a payout or a better position without ever complaining that you're being scapegoated, because again, it's harder to prove if you don't have enough evidence, and no one will believe you.
Wow. And I always love to end on a positive note, giving people hope. So can leaders or teams interrupt this scapegoating cycle and just create healthier cultures? Can we work together?
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. When you want to blame, so blaming someone should be a red flag to any leader that this is what they're doing. And they should take ownership of some part of something, because if you're a leader or a manager, you do have a part to play in team cohesion. And so if you're assigning blame to someone, that's on you. That's your own insecurity. So that's what you have to deal with. If the leader is unaware of it, but the rest of the group value this person, they have to keep valuing this person and push back against any narratives that come from above about this person. And they all have to do it in solidarity. That way, not one person is seen as the bad guy.
Wow. Such an interesting topic. And the fact that you've seen it, you've noticed it, that's incredible, actually. And I'm actually thinking back to so many of my workplaces from GP training, GP work, but also hospitals. And I can actually pick a few moments out there that witnessed definitely the scapegoating. I don't know whether to laugh or cry, but it's so prevalent in the medical industry.
Yep.
Oh my God.
It is. It really is. I've had many doctor clients who are in the process of it in academic medicine, or just, with patients on their teams, nurses. Yeah, it's because, in nursing, we already know that there's high level of hostility and aggression, female on female aggression, strongly hierarchical, but also competitive. Any competitive environment will bring it out, because competition and envy kind of go hand in hand. You're trying to get to the top. So anyone else is your barrier to getting up there. So instead of, again, responding with maturity, you're going to respond with reactivity and try to find a way to out that person or get above that person. And sometimes it can be quite hostile and vindictive in the way we do it.
So, Nathalie, where can people download your book and buy it? Yeah.
Well, it's an ebook. They can find it on my website, or they can go online and just do a search, and kobo.com sells it. And a print book will be coming shortly.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yes.
Amazing, Nathalie. Thank you again for sharing your wisdom. I think these topics are so important just to create awareness. Once you are aware and you have that knowledge, you can actually do something positive instead of feeling like a victim and feeling stuck.
Yeah.
I think it's so important. There's always you can always shed a different perspective on any situation.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's the subtle things that I love to focus on, because like you said, you wouldn't have thought about it until started sharing about this process. And then it occurred to you that, oh my goodness, I've experienced this. It's quite common. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Nathalie.
Pleasure. Thanks, Shani.
Thanks for listening to Six Hats, where it's all about progress, not perfection. If this episode spoke to you, don't wait, hit follow now, leave a quick review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Want to take your next step today? Download my ebook. The link is waiting in the show notes. And remember, this is general advice only. Always speak to your practitioner for anything medical. See you next time.